The Toronto Maple Leafs have made a surprising trade as following the trade deadline. We had a last minute trade hours and hours later trickle in. We're going to break that down as well as discuss some more Leafs updates and some more comments surrounding the Brandon Carlo trade from Brad Treliving. We also have some updates surrounding tonight's game and the projected lines. Stay tuned for all that in this episode, folks. Before we get into it, quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. If you're part of the 71% who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. So make sure to hit that button. Your guys' support has been unbelievable. And a quick note, tonight following the game, we will be live, of course. And that's going to be an electric one because the debut of Brandon Carlo and Scott Laughton is going to happen. All signs are pointing to it happening tonight. Darius, tonight we're going to see Brandon Carlo. We're going to see Scott Laughton. But the Leafs made another trade late last night. And this one is extremely interesting because not only is it one that no one really expected, it's actually a very crucial trade as it pertains to some of the depth on especially in the AHL level. Let's dive right into it here. So the Leafs have announced a minor trade with Minnesota for forward Reese Johnson. Future considerations are going back to Minnesota. Now, this trade was announced. It's not a huge trade. It's not a groundbreaking trade, but it's a pretty surprising trade because it happened well past the trade deadline. Obviously, technically it happened before, but if you're unfamiliar with Reese Johnson, he is a center. He is a minor league deal. They picked up the Regina-born Reese Johnson, 26, from the Wild for future considerations. Not even a pick. 3 NHL games this year, 144 in total, 13 points in 49 starts. So add some much-needed depth now to the Toronto Marlies, and it's going to be interesting to see where he factors in and if he factors into the NHL level going forward. I doubt it this year, though.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen this year. And he's already 26, so maybe not in the future either. But you never know. Injuries happen throughout the playoffs, so you never know if a guy like this gets the call. And I think it could be very interesting. But like you said, a center, he's already 26 years old, probably a minor league deal because obviously they traded Nikita Gurbenkin. I don't think he's going to take his spot on the team, but they probably just needed another guy who has AHL experience to come in and take a spot on the Marlies. He likes to fight, that's for sure. If you type his name into either Google or Twitter, you can find some of that as well. So a physical player for sure, but I don't know. You never know down the road if injuries happen. Maybe he gets into the lineup. The playoffs are physical, so you never quite know. But I don't know if he's going to touch the NHL level this year.
Yeah, I don't think he will. But at the end of the day, 26 years old, he is somebody, not really a prospect, but we cover every trade on the channel, so I had to cover this one as well. And again, it is in exchange for cash considerations. Now, as you look at some of his stats, he does have NHL experience, but it is not, he's putting up Ryan Reeves numbers out there. So for the Minnesota Wild this year, he's put up 0 points in 3 games. A couple of years previous to that on a very bad Chicago Blackhawks team, he put up 6 points and 5 points. I mean, he's just not a great player, but they gave up Fraser Minton. They gave up Nikita Gurbenkin. They gave up a lot of their depth guys, specifically for, of course, Nikita Gurbenkin. He should take his spot with the Marlies. That's probably going to be the biggest thing here for in the Marlies. They need a depth down there at the in the Marlies at that level because regarding their current team, which we'll dive into in a little bit here, they have a lot of guys who are going to be cycling through. So let me know down below, or let us know down below what your thoughts are on this move. And if you're familiar with Reese Johnson, because I'm going to be honest, I wasn't super familiar. I think I've heard his name a couple of times just from, like you mentioned, probably the fights on Twitter. But it's going to be interesting to see and someone to keep an eye on because we talked about some players, obviously, like Steven Lorentz. Obviously, it's a bigger deal than this. But even Alex Steves, the guy where they make a signing and PTO, wherever it end up being, and he ends up making some sort of impact. So maybe Reese Johnson can have the same fate. But looking at the trades now that they made yesterday and some more details that have come out, as well as the lines for tonight's game based on their practice yesterday. After acquiring Scott Laughton and Brandon Carlo, trading Connor Dewar and Timmins, and adding Pacioretty to the LTIR, because yes, Pacioretty has officially been added to the LTIR. Yep. The Maple Leafs have $195,000 remaining in cap space, and as it pertains to their picks in this upcoming draft, they have the round 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7 with 2 fifth-round picks. 2026 picks around 3, 5, and 6, and then 2027 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 7. So no first-round picks for the next 3 years. They do have some assets to make some moves, whether that be Ben Danford, whether that be Easton Cowan, and some second-round picks in future years. But the cupboard is a little bit empty as it pertains to first-round picks for the foreseeable future.
It does look a little bit empty to a degree, but you know, they can always still make trades down the line if they need to. But this is a necessary evil, I think, at this point for the Toronto Maple Leafs. If you look at other contending teams' cupboard, it's pretty bare as well, but they don't care because they're going for Stanley Cups every year. So I think that's the mindset all Leafs fans should have right now. You know, you have some of the best players in the world on your team right now, and a lot of people might scoff at that or roll their eyes. It's true, right? A lot of these guys are on Four Nation face-off rosters, so they have some of the best players in the world. It's going to fall on their shoulders at the end of the day. So Not a problem for me emptying the cupboard to a degree, right? Obviously, they're keeping Ben Danford, they're keeping Easton Cowan, which I think is good. And also, Max Pacioretty being added to the
Yep.
LTIR, I think is very interesting because he's going to be out for an extended period of time now. I don't know if this has to do with the actual injury or if this has to do with the salary cap. I'm leaning more towards the salary cap. He may return this season to the lineup if somebody else gets injured, right? And they can kind of shift around the salary. So we might see him again this season. Maybe they hold him out to the playoffs. We don't know what the plan is at this point, but obviously he's injured and he hasn't stayed healthy for an extended period of time this year. So it's kind of a, an obvious move, I think, for the Leafs to make to put him on LTIR, free up that cap space, and then, try and use that obviously as they did at the deadline. So not sure we'll see him again this year. We'll see how things go down the line, but we could definitely see him in the playoffs.
Yeah, very interesting. And again, the trade deadline for NHL and for hockey in general is very late. There's only 25, 30, however many the exact amount of games are left in the season. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. And the trade is officially official. So there's a couple details here. 2026, the pick is top 5 protected, which is something that A, we didn't know for sure whether there was going to be protection on it. It's top 5 protected, and B, it is the 2026. So just confirming that. And they also sent a 4th round pick. So the pick that they got in the Scott Laughton trade, they forwarded off in the Brandon Carlo trade to the Boston Bruins. So technically the Scott Laughton trade is now just for a 6th round pick rather than a 4th and a 6th because they gave the 4th in the Brandon Carlo trade. So some tidy work there by Brad Treliving, especially if, the 4th round pick was something that put the deal over the edge. You get that from the Scott Laughton trade is obviously good to see as well. And Brad Treliving spoke out on Brandon Carlo, and he said he's been on our radar for a long time. Like we mentioned yesterday, you don't know when players are going to become available, but surrounding Brandon Carlo himself and joining the Leafs overall, once I heard it was Toronto, I got excited. Being a rival, was a bit a bit of a shock at first, sorry. But aside from that, this is my first time being traded in general, so it was going to be a shock regardless. For me, I'm looking at the opportunity we have, and especially up front, the group up front, and I'm focused on facilitating them the best I can. So yeah, I'm really excited for this opportunity. On the flip side, you have Fraser Minton saying unforgettable times in the 6, which is a little bit sad, a bit emotional for us. We've been covering, and everyone, we know Fraser Minton now for a while. He played this season all the way back in the offseason, was one of the top prospects, still is one of the top prospects. I'm sure we'll turn into one of them in the Boston Bruins pipeline if I'm there. But at the end of the day, Brandon Carlo, those are the details on the trade. And I mean, I'll take any protection. It's better than unprotected.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know it's top 5 protected, which is a bit of a stretch, right? If the Leafs win the lottery or somehow, don't make the playoffs next year, like that could have been an issue, I guess. But, it's nice to have the protection on it. It would have been nicer if it was top 10, but that's fine. But, it's a little bit sad to see Fraser Minton go, yes. But I feel like if the Leafs are in the 3rd round of the playoffs, not too many Leaf fans are going to be thinking about Fraser Minton, right? We're going to be thinking about like how the Leafs can win this series or move on to, a couple series and hopefully make it to the Stanley Cup final, right? I think he's a great young player, but they have a great pretty young, still 28 years old, defenseman locked up for the next couple of years who will make a difference and recognizes the opportunity in front of him. I think this is a great quote. And he recognizes the talent up front as well. So it's great. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him play. So fantastic work, I think, from Brad Treliving. Honestly, considering what other teams gave up for some of the players that they got too, I think it's a pretty good return in that way. I'm excited to see them play. And we talked about it earlier about the Scott Laughton trade, getting those other assets in return, those draft picks, how they could then flip them. And I guess that kind of got it over the line, like you said, like a 4th round pick, I guess. But I guess I got over the line, and it was handy work from Brad Treliving.
Yeah. And one final thing I want to show you guys before we finish up here. Funny enough, these were the lines in yesterday's at the trade deadline, and I just want to throw this up here because you see Nyes, Matthews, Marner, Holmberg, Tavares, Nylander. That will all say the same. McMahon, Domi, Robertson, Lawrence, Camp, Dewar with the extra, or Camp, Yarncroke with the extras, Dewar and Benoit / Timmins. So Timmins is done, Dewar is done, but as you look at the lines now, it's going to be very different tomorrow. Stolarz is in net. You're going to see, obviously Scott Laughton. Craig Berube said he's going to be playing center, so Scott Laughton is the 3rd line center. Probably Bobby McMahon on the right wing there with Hannes Holmberg probably on the left line, or Max Domi starting on the left line. It's going to be a bunch of different things. So they now are a lot deeper. They're a lot better, but it's crazy to see that just, 12, 18 hours ago, less than 24 hours ago, Connor Timmins and Dewar are practicing, and just like that, they're no longer on the Toronto Maple Leafs. That'll wrap it up. Let us know down below what your thoughts are. We'll have multiple videos coming for you all today ahead of a huge game tonight. One of the most exciting, probably the most exciting game of the season. Following these 2 new huge additions, will be live afterwards. Make sure you tune to that. Thank you guys for watching.